Even the Lord has to listen to his mom. What does this have to do with us? What does she say? She doesn't speak to Jesus again, but rather she says, gather these servants. And then she says to them, do what he's about to tell you. Well, now Jesus is stuck. He has to do something. And what does he say? Draw the water from the jars, these big, tall containers. Draw out the water. And out of that water vessel comes this really high quality wine. So we got the top dollar French wine that was served at the beginning of this service. Francesca would say the top dollar Italian wine. And they've drank it till all the bottles are gone, and then out comes the Manischewitz. And then out comes $3 Chuck, I think is the name of it. And the wine that comes in the little box container. And they've consumed all of that. And the stewards and the servants, we are out of wine. This is supposed to be a grand celebration, and there should be plenty of wine until everybody is seeing double or triple. And yet they have run out, and Jesus just says, pull water out of those vessels and serve it. The steward, a good steward, is going to test things. You got to test the food before it's served to all the guests, and you want to test the wine and make sure that it is good for the guests. And so the steward has sipped this wine and says, "What is this that you would wait so long to bring out the best stuff?" The stewards are keeping their mouths shut, or the servants are keeping their mouths shut in relation to the stewards, because they really don't want to say, this country bumpkin over here made some homemade wine. And it's better than that stuff that you paid $50 or $80 or more dollars a bottle for. He just went, that's the fastest producing wine I've ever seen. They kept their mouths shut. And at this gathering of this wedding, it wasn't the best first, but it was a progression and a transformation. So it can be for us, for our church, for our country, for we as a people. Some people put their best foot forward first, and then they get comfortable, and what's that word that starts with an L? They get lazy. And so it's a progression downward. Other folks are the late bloomers, the one that one, not going to measure up to much. But Grandma loves him, so shall we? And then that's the individual that blossoms and comes to life, and people are, I didn't see that. Or like the video that we had with the little kids from Australia, at the Christmas Eve service, and there's this one little boy that says, they won't be expecting that, as they see how Jesus, this King of Kings, this Lord of Lords, comes out of nowhere. And instead of this big, strong leader who can kill somebody even bigger, remember David? Well, they won't be expecting that out of a weak, helpless child. That's the transformation where the good wine comes later. In America, the royals over on the other side of the pond weren't expecting what they would get when a nice little letter comes rolling and says, we have grievances. And then they break away and they write this little constitution. The greatest thing on earth, they thought. Was our Constitution the best? Not by a long shot. It started out with $3 Chuck. And if y'all like that wine, well, there are better out there. But it started with that, and they had to work. They had to tend. They had to care for the vineyards before the good stuff could come. Tomorrow's Dr. King Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and there was a progression that led to where he was, and he said, we aren't there yet. But he had this dream, and that dream included those water vessels like Jesus had at the wedding. Those water vessels were waiting for the power, for the invocation, for the prayer, to turn them, to transform them, to make them a powerful gift. Dr. King worked on that and shared that vision. Remember that I have a dream speech that he had, and it including saying, one day, we won't judge people by the color of their skin or by their nationality and other things, but we will judge by the content of one's character. So we won't look at the outside, but we will seek what is inside. We won't take the cover. We will open up the pages and see what is on the inside. Now we, as United Methodists, are in the same place where we're looking on the outside and we want to see what's on the inside. What is our story going to be? I have a dream that one day we won't just look at the covers, but we'll open up the inside and we'll say, there's a name here. Beth, your name is here. And now the page is blank. And what does that page have to share? Is a blank page a bad thing? No. Because the blank page is a canvas. A canvas where that paintbrush that Sophia and I were talking about, that paintbrush can begin to work. And a vision for us as a church, for us as a nation, and for us as a world is to look at that blank page and say, what can it be? And how can it be? Some of us look at the page and we see nothing but blankness. Other of us look at the page and we start to say, well, I have to draw lines before I can paint. It's the only way that the painting's going to get done. I have to sketch it out. And others will take that paintbrush and they'll dip it in their favorite color. And whoosh, and that's where we begin. We start with what brings me the greatest joy. And then we expand outward, and others are going to take that canvas and they're going to say, well, this is the color that I dislike the most, but it's got to be there. So let me put a little bit of that in there. And now let me draw something beautiful around it. And a picture begins to develop. I have a dream where that picture holds a lot of people. Where that picture invites folks in, where it draws you right into the center. In the center of it all is Jesus Christ. And Jesus invites us into relationship. Those who are closest to the center, they can see both Jesus and they can turn around and they can see far out and they start to draw us in. I have a dream. I've had a lot of dreams. But I have a dream, and it is this. No child will be left behind. Nobody will be left out of that painting. Nobody will be denied access to Jesus Christ. Today's communion is out of step with the normal schedule for most Methodists because we would wait till that first Sunday. But when Jesus was at that wedding in Cana, his ministry really started to kick off. As he took something simple, not the bread in this case, but water, and turned it into wine. He took somebody's sorrow or somebody's struggle or somebody's embarrassment, somebody's challenge, and he gave opportunity. Is it a challenge that a wedding runs out of wine? Now, old school Methodists, post-temperance movement beginning will say, no, that's not a challenge because we don't have that kind of stuff. But in Jesus' day, wine was an essential part of that gathering. And for the groom and the groom's family not to have enough would have been an insult. It would have been a shame. It would have been an embarrassment. And Jesus took that shame and that embarrassment away, and he offered a blessing. And he gave it to the people. On the night in which Jesus was betrayed, he broke bread with folks. Even with the one he knew would betray him. And in the breaking of bread, that meant he prayed for and with even the one who would betray him. And he said to that one and to all of them gathered there, he said, this is my body broken for you, for the forgiveness of sin. Take, eat. This is my body given for you. Some people think I'm a little too far to the left on occasion, but I got that from my grandpa, who was a minister in that time in which Dr. King was there in a wedding. was a defining moment for him. Not actually conducting one, but the theology and the doctrine around it. Grandpa wasn't a Methodist. He was from an evangelical association. And they said to him, sign this document. And the document pronounced a bunch of scriptures that said, thou shalt not support, engage in, officiate, or bless in any way a marriage between people of different races. Grandpa was the product of interracial marriage and refused to sign and took the stand of saying, God's blessing extends. Wedding and blessing. A wedding is a covenant of blessing between individuals and between a community and God. God calls us into a relationship with love and care like a marriage and a family. Come and be fed. Jesus took the cup and he shared it with the disciples. Said, this is my blood, which is poured out for you and for many. Drink from it, all of you. And as often as you do so in remembrance of me. As we come to Dr. King's birthday celebration and remembrances of bad days and the move towards good as a country, let us do so by breaking bread first, and then by going out into the world and sharing God's light. We don't know what the future holds in our lives, in our church, or in our nation. What we do know is Christ is present and calls us into the world to serve. So wherever you are, wherever you go, whatever you do, take Jesus with you. The bread of life and the cup of salvation. Our table is open. Nobody denied. Let us break bread together.